Good afternoon, everyone. This is Queenie Clem with Queenie's Book Talk and Reviews, and I am your literary ambassador. And today on my channel, I have author Andre Ray. Welcome, Andre. How are you?
I'm fine. How are you?
Fine. Okay, tell us about yourself.
Well, first, I'd like to start off just thanking you again for this wonderful opportunity. And I feel fortunate and blessed to be part of the interview. And I hope that you and everyone that will be watching this is doing well during this crisis. A little bit about myself. I was originally born in New York, raised in North Carolina. Um, been a civil servant for many years until I was hurt in the line of duty in 2014, which that kicked off my author career in writing path. Thanks to my wife, who's an avid reader, and which brought me here to the author world. So I had no, I can say, idea that I was a writer, could be a writer. Didn't know anything about the writing industry except through my wife, like I said, who's an avid reader. And long story short, we was on the way to board a cruise ship in Florida. And when we got into a long conversation about a couple going through marital problems, so I asked her, could we meet with the couple once we got back, go out, to dinner, maybe we can, help minister to them. And she asked me, who was I talking about? I said, the couple. She said, that's a book I've been reading. And, and this was after a 45-minute conversation. And thus kicked off my author career because I said that I could write a book. And she was like, no, you can't. I said, well, I already wrote it. She asked, where's it at? I pointed to my head, told her it was in my head. And she said, well, what's the title? And so I said, well, give me a minute, close my eyes. I prayed about it because I pray about everything. And it was just like the Lord spoke directly to me and said, Undercover Deacon. And so I texted to myself so I wouldn't forget. When we got back, I took a pack of printing paper that goes in the copier, and I literally hand wrote the book front page to back page in 7 days.
Wow.
Yeah, and that was supposed to be the only book that I was going to write. And then when it came out, everybody was asking for part two, which I didn't have no clue what the part two was. So I prayed about it, and then Undercover Deacon 2 came out, and thus went like to the, I'd say, up from there, because I literally wrote 7 books in less than 2 years because they just kept flowing like water.
Wow. And what is your genre?
My Christian fiction.
Oh, okay. Now tell us about one of your books.
Well, I would start off with the first one, which I mentioned, Undercover Deacon. And basically that book, like I said, it came, because I pray about all my books, and I try to write them so they're, even though they're fiction, they read like a movie, and they're true to life, which every book you can relate to or know somebody that can relate to the book, and they all have a message in them, which, each person receives different. But that book is basically about a young man who was from Chicago, and who was in and out of jail, in and out of the streets, and was a drug dealer. And he got into a situation which caused him to have to abruptly leave town. But in his doing so, there was a message that his mother gave him, even though she was living the same type of life, on drugs, not doing so well. But she had a strong faith, and she told him that he could always hide out in the Lord. And so, not knowing what it truly meant, he took it to heart that she meant that he can hide out amongst Christians in the church until things die down. And thus began his relationship with the Lord, and also with the first lady of the church, that took another turn that he didn't even understand, which is a whole nother story by itself. Like I said, it's a powerful book, and I would encourage anyone to read it. And I always tell people, from the feedback that I get, make sure you have a box of tissues, because what people tell me that it pulls every emotion that you have and that you thought you didn't have, and will literally leave you in tears.
Wow. Okay, you say you have 7 books?
Well, 8 now.
8. Do you want to talk about those other 6?
Yeah. Well, and I don't know if you can see behind me, because like I said, my first 2 was Undercover Deacon 1 and 2. Then brought on Temptation Has a Price, which will be this one up here. And that one there is a very powerful book, which brings out a lot of issues within the church, within individuals' lives, because it's about an elder who was basically born with a silver spoon in his mouth, didn't want for anything, but sort of ventured off and got into a little trouble because he was a womanizer, and thus he didn't understand the ramifications of what he was doing to others, until the women that he was hurting turned around and came for him. And when they came for him, they came with a vengeance that he wasn't even ready for. And it brought out a lot of things that were hidden in his life and in the women's life that that he was involved with. And there was one particular woman, Robin, who he really took to a place where she didn't want to go. But then through that hurt, he thought that he could just dismiss what she was going through. And she took his, I don't want to give the plot away because I want people to read it, but she took his life to a point where it almost cost him his life. Like I said, and that's a very, very, very powerful book. And when you first started reading it, a lot of people were questioning whether it was a Christian fiction book, because it starts off strong, or it's in the intimacy area, which people have to understand that Christians have an intimacy level as well as everybody else. But once you get past that point, and you start seeing the ramifications of it, the spiritual damage that you can do to a person, and there's a price to be paid once you cross that line. So that's a very powerful book, which have come back with a lot of positive reviews, and also were enabled me to communicate with people in real time that were going through the things in the book that which would normally be dismissed. Talked to a young lady who read the book, and she don't want to give her name, but she was telling me about how she was passed around in the church from person to person, and when she read that book, it was almost like she was reading her life come true. So it's, like I said, it's a very powerful book. And then after that one, then I wrote Never Letting Go, which is the story about a father's love for his daughter. Was based in North Carolina, and basically his wife was ill and died from cancer, which his oldest daughter blamed him for her death and became rebellious, and she started getting into things she shouldn't have, and met up with a guy that took her on a roller coaster ride that she didn't want to be on. But no matter what she did to rebel against her father, he was not letting go, even if it came to him giving up his life to save hers. And the conclusion of the book will, I'd say, amaze you at the power of faith and one man for the love of his daughter, and also for not giving up on the person that took his daughter on this ride, which a lot of people probably wouldn't have done, but you have to read the book to understand that faith is a powerful thing, and the love of God is a powerful thing. You know, even amongst the people that you don't want to give it to. So, and then after that book came Serenity Through the Storm, which was about a young lady named Destiny who was young, in love, thought she married the man of her life, which, you know, we all strive to do that. But she realized really quick that the love of her life was also the demon of her life, and to protect herself and her children, she was forced to get away from him, which he was not, like most abusers do, was not ready to let go or gonna let happen. And so she fought with everything she had, and then she realized that it was, once again, her faith and her determination to be free, but also she still loved him and wanted to see the best in him. And so that is a book I strongly recommend to anyone going young, going through any kind of domestic issues, that you can survive. And like I said, you can survive. And then after that book came No Weapon Formed Against Me, which is this book right here. And that is another powerful book about a middle-aged woman who went through a divorce, and was trying to get back. She had an excellent job, you know, her own finances, so she didn't want anything. She just wanted to get back to life as normal. But through her lifestyle, which was, like I said, she didn't want for anything. So sometimes we have a tendency to, how do I put it, not see the life of other people around you that may be misfortune. And so she met a young man in church who was a little bit younger than her, who she kind of took to, and she wasn't looking for any relationship. It just fell into place, which she thought. But the premise of that book was the young man was sent to her by somebody that was close to her to destroy her life and to take everything that she thought that she had away from her and basically put her life through a living hell, that this person felt that she was forced to live because she looked down on her. And so that's another powerful book that I would recommend, but I don't want to give the premise away to that book. And then after that one came Midnight Hour, which is up here. And because I wrote several books on females going through domestic abuse, then I was asleep one night and the Lord put in my spirit that, you know, men go through domestic abuse, but it's an untold story. And I know personally men that have gone through it and still going through it. And so I wrote that book about a man that was going through domestic abuse and who was physically beaten down by his wife, but he was determined that he was not giving up on his marriage no matter what, and thus wound up having a massive heart attack, and still wouldn't give up on what was happening in his life. And so that's another very powerful book that I would suggest. And one of the mixed reviews that I got, which I kind of found it hard to believe people were saying that they would believe that most women would be in abusive relationships, but they didn't believe a man would stay in a relationship as long as he did, because he stayed in it for over 10 years. And that was some of the feedback that I got, that a man would not stay in a relationship. And I tell people that I beg to differ. There's still men today that are still in the relationship that going through domestic abuse for 10, 20 years. I know a couple personally were in a heated domestic abuse relationship over 30 years, and they're still together to this day. So, and they were at the point where they was having the police, EMS come to their house on a regular basis and whatnot from the fighting and the destruction that they was causing in each other's life, but they're still happily married to this day. And that's after 30 years.
Wow. Whew. For a reader that has never read or heard of your books, what will be the first book that you recommend them to read?
Well, I always recommend, and if my wife was sitting here, she would tell you to start with Undercover Deacon, so that way you will get a premise of my writing and the direction that the Lord has asked me to write in. And then once you read that book, then you'll just go to the next one, because then you'll understand, like I said, the premise of my writing, and then it will throw you in to want to read more. Because like I said, even though it's based in Christian fiction, a lot of feedback I get is there's no way that that's fiction. These stories have got to be real, because they read like a movie, and they're true to life. And I tell people all the time that that's the way the books came out. These characters are not real. A lot of people, they argue with me all the time that these are real people in real time. And I say, in some state, some country, these people are real, but in the books they're fiction. But my thing is, when you read the books, I want to draw you into the point where you forget that you're reading, and you can actually visually stand there, close your eyes, and be in the life of each character in these books. And I try to write all my books where there's no main character per se. Each person in the book has a story all their own. And some of these books can go on and on and on. Like when I wrote Temptation Has a Price, about Elder Noel, I had to literally pray and ask God to release me from that book, because it's 300 some pages, and it could have went to 2,000 pages, because the book wouldn't let me out. That's how much I was drawn into it, where I was waking up at night thinking about this book, and I can literally see the characters sitting down beside me as I was writing this book. That's how much I had got into that book, because it was just so real.
Okay. Where do you? Okay. What about how do you select your characters and your covers of your books?
Now, say that question again.
How did you select your characters? Where did the characters come from?
That's a good question. The characters come from praying and just being still and asking the Lord, what do you want me to write? Because I tell people, even though my name is on the books, none of these books I physically wrote from my mind. They all came from my spirit and my heart. And it's almost like the characters came from, like I said, actual people that are going through these situations that are asking me to write their story without them coming forth and putting their name on it. And I would get a notepad, and the names would come, the characters would come, the descriptions would come. And then as I write the books, it's almost like they take a life of their own, to the point where even though I'm doing it on my laptop, it's like my hands are like taking over and on it, and the books are writing themselves. To the point when I have to get to the point where I say, release me, because like I say, the stories can go on and on and on.
Okay. And what about your covers? I love some of your covers. What's the inspiration behind your covers?
Well, the covers are, I had two cover artists. One I deal with exclusively now. His name is Mario Patterson, and he is on Facebook. And then literally what I would do is I would send him the synopsis of the book, and it took us a minute to connect, because a lot of times, as a Christian author, it's sometimes difficult to find a graphic artist that can give you a cover that will stay in the Christian genre, but also reflect what you're trying to write. And once we connected, all I had to do was send him the synopsis, and then he sent me back, I got you. And then a couple of days later, he sent me a cover, and I'm like, it's almost like you was in my mind. And he was like, once I read your synopsis, I knew that this was the cover. And that's how each cover came out. And I literally had do a little bit of twerk into it or change anything to the covers. So I'm glad about that relationship, because like I said, as a Christian writer, you want a cover that stands out. But to me, you shouldn't have a cover that questions your integrity to your writing, but also you still want to draw people in. So you shouldn't have to cross, that line to get there.
Okay. What are your thoughts on reviews, whether they are good or bad?
My thoughts on reviews?
Yes.
Well, I'm gonna be transparent. When I first started, because like I said, I knew nothing of the writing industry, so I had to learn from my own mistakes and grow in humility. So I was complete wreck when negative reviews come out. I would stay up for days, trying to figure out why. Got to the point where my wife would just tell me, just be quiet, because I would just go into a rage because I didn't understand, because I knew the power of the book and I knew the message in the book. But then I had to learn that not everybody is going to like what you put out, and everybody's interpretation of what you put out will be different. And then there are some people that no matter how good your book is, they're going to find the negative side to it. And so it took me about 2 years to get to that point where I could look at a negative review and say, okay, that's your opinion. But for the first part, I was not a pleasure to be around when the negative review came out.
What do you do when you're not writing?
When I'm not writing, far as
anything, what else you do besides, if you're not writing, what are you doing? Are you working? Are you spending time with family? Or your hobbies?
Oh, yeah, well, when I'm not writing, then my main occupation is I'm on the front line. I'm on the front line, been there since the beginning of this coronavirus, COVID-19 situation. I transport and pick up lab specimens, and so therefore I'm directly in contact with potential positive cases on a daily basis. So that has sideline my mindset to write, because I'm always at the borderline of trying to remain at a peaceful state and stay safe, because not knowing I'm just one stop away from contracting this virus, and then I always have to come home and worry that I'm bringing it home with me. And then, so the ability to write right now is not even in me, and so I don't even try until this is over, because I know that if I do, it's not going to be what it should be. And so I try to stay focused on family, which 90%, over 90% of my family I can't even come around, because being in close proximity to the virus, that I'm afraid that I'll give it to them. My granddaughter, I haven't seen. And so my parents, I don't see them because they're at their vulnerable age. So it's mostly phone calls. My wife, like I said, I don't come into contact with her until I come home, shower, change, hand sanitize to death. She gets upset because I spray Lysol on everything, including myself. And so it's, and then I try to work out and to stay in shape, keep my immune system up. But it's a scary time.
It
It's a
is.
scary time.
What is the hardest thing about writing books?
The hardest thing
Mm-hmm.
for me, the hardest thing for me about writing is reviews. Other than that, to me, it's like once you get into it, it just takes you to a place where you know that you belong, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And everything, flows. Once you develop the characters and the synopsis of the book, then, I tell people, my advice is I learned just write. If that's your passion, just write. Just pick the pen up. Don't worry about content, spelling, or none of that. Just get it out of your head, out of your heart, onto paper, and then you can always fine tune it later. But just immerse yourself in that environment and let it take you wherever it wants to take you. And
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
So that's the only thing I find hard about writing, like I said, is just reviews and promotions is another hard thing because which after I wrote my first book, I didn't realize that being an independent author, that it would literally take over your life. I would spend 4 to 6 hours just promoting one book, just trying to get one person to read it, because is when you're new, trying to get your name out there and get exposure is hard, especially when you're independent, because a lot of doors that are open to a lot of authors are not accessible, to you. And until you develop that relationship and trust with other authors who are willing to speak your name and feel confident that it won't come back, and say, well, you recommended them. So, which I had developed a great relationship with a lot of well-known authors, met a lot of well-known authors, and I just been highly overwhelmed at the response and the welcoming that they have, offered me. And like I said, and the list is so long that I would sit here all day just to name some. But I'm just grateful for the opportunity that they've extended to me. Nesta Miller, Kimberly Lawson Roby, Jacqueline Thomas, and just to name a few. These authors have just been a true welcome mat to me.
Okay. Where did the love for books, reading, and writing come from?
That would go back to, like I said, once again, and I do that in all my acknowledgments and all my book, is I give that credit to my wife. Like I said, she's an avid reader, and once I say connected to the love that she has for it, then it just put me in a place where I feel comfortable in that environment. And so that's where I would say the love came from. It's from her. Love books, because when you talk to her, she just lights up like a Christmas tree, especially when you say some author's names. And it's to the point that when we go somewhere, like to a book signing or something like that, I have to remind her to come back, and help me, because she's like a kid in a candy store. And so that's the passion that I have now. So, and I think that in this time that we're in now, that everybody should at least spend time reading one book, get out, outside of your comfort zone of books that you only read, authors that you would only read, and discover some new authors out there, especially male authors, which we have a harder time getting exposure than most. And because I watched your interview that you had with several male authors, me and my wife watched it, and I was just overwhelmed at what they were saying. And I thank you for that, because it put me in contact with reaching out and reading their work, and because I didn't know they were out there. And because, like I said, I know a lot of female authors, but I don't know a lot of male authors. And when I do hear about them, I'm like, who's that? And I think that we need more of that exposure, so we won't have to have that saying in our statement when we do hear about a male author, like, who is that? It should be like, oh, okay, yeah, I know who that is.
Mm-hmm. All right, thank you. Where can where can readers get in contact with you and find your books?
Well, all my books are on Amazon. If you have Kindle Unlimited, you can read them for free. They're available on Amazon for purchase. You can also find me on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter. I have platforms on those. And like I tell most people, to take time, if you would find Undercover Deacon by Andre Ray, then you will find all of my other books, because they're all listed in there. So a lot of times I tell people it's a lot easier if you find authors, one book from an author, and you can find all of their books, because they're all delisted. And then you find their websites and also other ways of reaching them. And please leave a review whenever you do read an author's book, because that's how we know how we're doing, and then we know if people are actually reading the books. And I encourage everyone, like I said, if you haven't heard of me, please reach out, read my books, and I guarantee that you will be amazed and you will be delighted.
Okay. What are you currently reading right now?
What am I reading right now?
Mm-hmm.
Well, like I was saying earlier, right now I'm not even reading or writing, because of this crisis that we're in. That every minute of my time is spent just worrying about surviving this thing, because, like I said, I'm in such a close proximity, which I can't even describe, to the virus, that like I said, I'm at the point where I'm just one stop away from possibly contracting this or bringing this home, to the point that it is occupying all my time. That's why this moment in time right here, speaking to you, is such a relief, that it allows me to take my mind off for a few minutes, because tomorrow I have to go right back on the front line. And being that I work every weekend, that this is the only time that I have where I actually feel safe.
Okay, I read in your bio that you were a born-again Christian. Can you tell me what your testimony is?
Ooh. And this is shocking to some people, that I was born and raised as a Jehovah's Witness, and my family, for the most part, are still Jehovah's Witnesses. And it was at the age of 9, and I remember it like it was yesterday. I was sitting in my room at the age of 9, and I had this pillow that resembled a skateboard. And I made it in a home ec class in school. And I was proud of the thing, even though it was tacky looking, but I was proud of it. And this was in the afternoon. It was in the afternoon, summertime. The sun was out, skies were blue, and out of nowhere, my room got bright to the point where I couldn't even stand the light. And I heard this voice clear as day saying, "I'm calling you unto me to minister my word."
Mm-hmm.
And it lasted like for a few seconds, and then the room went back to normal. And I was like, "What is this?" So I didn't understand it. So I started reading the King James Version of the Bible for myself
Mm-hmm.
to every day without my parents knowing it, because I knew that would be a whole battle by itself.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So after reading it, then I slowly started understanding it, and it was like it was just speaking to me for years, and to the point where it went into my adulthood. And when I was in my 20s, that's long story short is I was in and out of clubs, drinking the whole 9 yards, and it was at a church service in Goldsboro, North Carolina, where I gave my life to the Lord. And I still remember exactly what I had on: dark brown pair of pants, an old yellow dress shirt, and some black dress shoes.
Mm-hmm.
And it was during a revival service at a church in Goldsboro, and it was a guest pastor there. And all of a sudden, I got hot, sweaty. I mean, sweat everywhere, and couldn't understand it. And then there was an altar call, and I wasn't going to get up, but something was like lifted me out of my seat, and I stood up and wasn't going to go up there. And then the pastor came over to me and called me out in the aisle, and he whispered in my ear, and he said, "Do you remember what was told to you when you was young?" That's what he said.
Wow.
And I'm like, huh? And so he said, "It still stands true today."
Yes.
And
Yes.
so that's when I gave my life to the Lord, and I've been a Christian ever since. And yeah, so.
Wow. Is there anything you would like to add before we close?
Well, again, I want to thank you for this opportunity, and I hope that you remain safe, and that you
Thank you.
continue to be blessed, and that your platform just continues to reach the masses. And I thank you, and I also want to tell everyone, please support your authors during this time, because they need it. And I think what you'll find in what they're offering is hope, life, and faith during this time. And please give male authors a chance, and to the point where you start reaching out to them and start letting their books become part of your reading genres as well. And I just, again, just thank you for the opportunity.
All right. Thank you. Thank you. Again, this is Queenie Clem with Queenie's Book Talk and Reviews. Happy reading. Bye, y'all.